Shudder is at it again with another early screening. This time it is for the horror film Satan's Slaves 2 Communion. This will be premiering on the Shudder streaming service on November 4th. Is it as good as the first film, or does it crash and burn? And really, it didn't need to be made. Find out in my thoughts next. When the heavy storm hits, it wasn't the storm that a family should fear, but the people and non-human entities who are out for them. The film stars Tara Bazzaro, Andy Arfin, Nazar Anzu, Brant Pelleray, Ratu Felicia, Jordi Pranata, and many more, and was directed by Joko Anwar. Upon getting the screening for Satan's Slaves 2 Communion, I had never watched the first film, so about a week and a half ago, I went back and I watched the first film, and I thought that film was pretty scary. It had a lot of jump scares, a little bit too many jump scares for me in that film, and I wish that they actually toned it down. I probably would have gave the film a little bit better score because it did have some really scary elements in that, and going into this film, I was just hoping that they would actually tone it down. So I do have to say, with this new film, they actually do tone down the film. And if you haven't seen the first film, I don't think you'll be necessarily lost going into this film, but it does actually help that you actually know the characters that were in the first film continuing on to the second film. So in the second film, you have this sister. She has two brothers and a father, and she's taking care of these actual individuals, and they live in this apartment. It has 14 floors, and they are in this actual area where a lot of strange things are actually happening at this apartment complex. There's a storm brewing, and so they're going to have to prepare for this actual storm that's going to happen because there's supposed to be a lot of flooding. And of course, there is a lot of strange little things in here. The film, there's a lot of good actual camera work in this, the technological effects in this. It's pretty good. I think it's a lot better than the first film. And this is actually the first Indonesian film that is actually in IMAX format. So I think that this film, it really would be really cool in an IMAX format, as they have really good sound in this film. I will say that the cinematography in this, it's not that strong because a lot of this film is actually in the dark. It's a lot of like detective kind of work. And when they're in the dark, they have all these flashlights and stuff. And then of course the storm is going and you have all this flooding. So you have a lot of scary kind of moments in the dark. And you have a lot of these different characters that are just wandering around the apartment, checking on people and seeing what's going on. And elaborating on the fact that this is kind of a detective kind of film, it also plays out like a haunted house kind of film as well. I think the acting and the chemistry between all the actors, especially during the scary and comedic moments, I think they all do a really good job. I do like watching the relationship of this brother kind of falling in love with this other girl. He tries to win her affections by actually taking care of her different electronics and trying to actually repair certain things that she has. She lives in this apartment, and he's just trying to win the affections of her. And I did actually enjoy that chemistry. I enjoy the sister bonding with her brothers and bonding with her father, and actually going through this whole mystery that they're actually trying to actually solve while they're in the dark. And at the same time, I do have to say that this film, it doesn't have a lot of jump scares like this first film, and that is good and bad because it's not really that scary of a film. And I also felt like the kills that actually happen in this film, it's not that they're bad, because they're not bad. They actually are effective, but at the same time, they happen to characters that really don't really mean anything. They don't have any significance in the film. So the ones that actually die, they're just dying because they need to have some kills in this. I think the scariest part in this actually involves a garbage chute with this actual kid. I thought that was actually the most scariest part of the film. And there's another scene that involves an elevator that was really scary as well, involving these little girls. So those were probably the scariest parts as far as kills and such. A couple little small jump scares here or there. But other than that, I don't think that this film is as scary or as effective as the first film. It seems like the setting here, it's a little bit more simplistic, and it seems a little bit of run-of-the-mill of certain things. I think the score in this, at certain points, it's kind of effective, and other times it's not as effective. I think compared to the first film, I definitely prefer the first film over the second film, even though I think the first film, it had its problems with having too many jump scares, and this one, it's definitely toned down more. I also found that in the movie, it didn't really have a lot of tension and didn't have a lot of build-up. They introduced a lot of characters that don't really have a lot of relevance, so it can be a little bit hard to follow at points. And I just felt like as we got to the third act, it felt very anticlimactic. There's a lot of flashy kind of lights. There's a lot of eerie kind of sounds in this film. So just a trigger warning if you don't like flashy lights. There is a lot of it in here. I think that it probably should have had it before the film, because As soon as you get to that third act, there's a lot of flashy lights in the film, especially because the film is in the dark most of the time. And I just also felt as we just kept going along in the story, it just didn't really build up to that tension, and it feels very half-baked as we get into that third act. And when we actually finally end up ending this film and finally coming to a conclusion, it just didn't really do too much for me. And from what I've heard that there's actually a third film actually prepared for this. And I personally don't think that this needs a third film in the trilogy. I didn't really feel like this film actually really built too much off the first film. It felt like it was really much easier going with the actual simplistic setting. And I just felt like a lot of the characters in here, they really didn't need to be in this film. And there's also just a lot of different calls to like Allah in here and different gods and such, which I didn't really understand that particular character that they actually introduced. I just think some of the characters in here, they don't really seem like they have a lot of relevance and anything that you can really relate to. And as the film keeps going on, it just feels like a bunch of characters introduced that really just don't have any significance. And I just found this film to just not be really a fully functional film. And I didn't really like it that much. I would say that this film is just okay. So I would give a score of this film a 2.5 out of 5. Just something that is just okay. It's not something that I would really revisit anytime soon. And I just think that if you actually really want to watch this film, I would say that it's a one-time watch at best. I think the first film is a lot more effective. So if you really are into wanting to get in to watch this actual franchise, I would say that the first film is the way to go. But thank you guys for checking out this review, and I'll see you guys on my next one.